Hi everyone, I'm going to title this video the April Fool. So this has been recorded on March 25th and temperature today is fantastic. Yeah, if anybody had seen my stories over the weekend, you'll have seen that behind me here, these seed trays, I filled 1,680 cells. That's what I had available, and as always, if you're wondering how I come to that total, I'm using the CD60 seed tray, which I'm really passionate about. It's the charged iodine seed tray and it comes in modules of 60. So I like to grow everything in batches of 60 because I can do 3 sets of 20, or I can do 30 and 30, or a full batch of 60, or whatever. And that's just personally my preference, but it works really well for me. These seed trays, although they are a wee bit on the costly side, they're nearly sort of £5 or £6 each, but they're made of a really high quality recycled plastic. They're really durable. There's videos online, I think, of cars driving over them, so they're really strong. They last a lifetime. They're a lifetime job. I'd rather invest in really good plastic as buy in cheaper plastic that ends up going to waste. So back to the topic. Why is this titled the April Fool? So historically, going back in time, it has always been known that the April Fool supposedly was the person that sowed their seed too early, or jumped the gun, or tried to get ahead of the game because the weather picked up. Because obviously, as we know, in a UK or Irish climate, temperature changes. For example, there could be frost in April, there could still be snow in April. Right up into May, you can get frosts or even minus figures at night. So historically, the April Fool was the person that, I suppose, jumped the gun, saw good weather earlier, decided to sow their seed, and then their crop died. And although there's no proven way to sort of prove that that story is absolutely legitimate, historians have looked at this story in the past. It sort of goes back to the Inca, it goes back to ancient Rome, it goes back to like even really indigenous tribes in remote areas. So that story around the world seems to exist, that there seems, you know, the April Fool seems to be in every sort of race of people going back in time. But anyway, in today's world, we have the luxury of polytunnels, which I'm standing in right now. We've got greenhouses. Some of these seed trays after this video will be going into propagators. Some of them will be happy enough to sit here in the tunnel, and there'll be enough heat just to bring those seedlings on. So yeah, things have been really busy here at the tunnel. There's been a lot going on, and I just really haven't had time to make any content. There's been lots of potting on going on as well. I've got lots of plants that have been potted on most of this week. There's been a couple of late nights. Lots of plants potted on behind the camera, which I'll show you. There's a lot of plants that have been moved outside that are tough enough that even if there is a frost due, that they'll be okay. But I've got horticulture fleece here as backup if I need to check in on them. So what have I sown today? So obviously 1,080 cells, 1,680 cells is a lot of cells. This was the first one I done this morning. I've been up very early this morning. I've been here in the tunnel from 10 to 7. This is a really exciting mix of seeds that require surface sowing, which means they need light to germinate them. Most seeds, generally speaking, you will sort of cover them either with vermiculite or some compost. So these seeds, specifically all these varieties, need it to be surface sown. So let me see, there is chocolate vine in there, there's the Egyptian bean vine, there's the Cayman Island forget-me-not, Euphorbia mellifera, and Cornus mass, all requiring light to germinate. And those are all totally different plants. For example, there's 2 climbers, there's 1 herbaceous, 1 shrub, 1 tree. So it's a really random mix of plants all in one tray. Something else I'm trialling at the minute is the least amount of compost I need to use per seed. So for example, some of those seeds are really large, as you can see there, and those little seed cells are very tiny. But that's something I'm trialling, is what is the least amount of compost I can use to sow seeds in. So then moving on to something else that requires light for germination, we have pulmonia, which is known as the foxglove tree. And then on the other side of the tray is eucalyptus. This one is covered with a sprinkling of vermiculite, and the variety of the eucalyptus there is called silver drop. And again, 2 very, very large trees natively in the wild. Pulmonia has been a humongous tree Eucalyptus, obviously, as many of you know, can grow very tall, but yet tiny, super tiny seeds, far smaller than an acorn, like the size of your, I don't know, your average herbaceous plant seed, like not large at all. The pulmonia seed, I was shocked. They're like little, you can't, the camera will not even pick up how tiny they are. I was really squinting to get them in. They're just little specks of sand almost on that compost. So a lot of concentration this morning staring at this to make sure I wasn't duplicating 2 seeds in a cell. And then further on down, we just have, you know, loads of other seeds that don't mind being covered. So for example, there's a full tray of white cosmos. There's no issue with it being covered at all. It's completely covered over there with vermiculite. It's worth pointing out as well, I have set all these trays the night before so they were soaking to absorb moisture before I sowed them. So then I was sowing them straight into a pre-moistened compost mix. All the water is collected from my rain butt, and again, that's just something I'm really conscious about now. I'm trying to use as little tap water as possible, or water from the mains where possible. So thankfully it has been raining a lot recently, and I know a lot of people probably have been complaining about the rain, but given the fact that last spring was one of the driest on records, it does not bother me in the slightest that it has rained as much as it has. I'm trying to collect as much of that rainwater as I can, because hopefully not, but there could be a chance again we have another summer like last summer, where mainland UK got extreme drought for a long period of time. So whilst it's raining, honestly, it doesn't faze me. I don't mind. So here's another half and half seed tray. One half needs light to germinate, the other half isn't as fussy. So we have Californian pepper there on this side with the vermiculite topping, and on the other side we have calomi. So you're probably thinking calomi is a really difficult annual to grow. It's also known as the spider flower. Really tall, amazing pink flowers. This one here is the slightly lilac-y purple one. I do have the pink one. I have never yet to this day successfully grown calomi. I try it year after year after year. I've been trying different techniques. I know it needs light to germinate, so I know for a fact that that's helpful, but I also need it's very temperature dependent. So that's something else I'll be looking into. The other side then obviously is a pepper, and a pepper and calomi have nothing in common. However, I'm trying to match like for like. So when this goes into the propagator, both of these will need approximately 20 degrees to germinate. So this is a vegetable that can grow happily beside an annual, and whilst they're in the propagator, there's absolutely no issue. It's not like one's out competing the other, or it's not like one needs a cooler temperature, one needs a warmer temperature. But I'll show you something that's the complete reverse of that. For example, in this tray, the majority of the tray is Cerinthe, and the smaller half, this little section at the very end, is yellow wax bells, which is a herbaceous perennial. So Cerinthe, quite a common flower amongst florists, very popular. This one, maybe not so much, but when you read the requirements of both, they need an ambient temperature, so anything between 13 to 18 degrees. So for example, this would be a tray then that's going to stay within the tunnel, because that would be an ambient temperature I can reach through the day, whereas I would not be putting this in a propagator. And for example, if I had put the Cerinthe and the calomi in the same tray, what you would find is the calomi would probably be really happy. It needs that additional heat from the propagator. The Cerinthe would start life off happy, but then it would get leggy, and it would just flop over. It would be too much heat too soon, too quick. So it needs moderate heat, but not as much. So for example, this tunnel will remain unheated throughout the evening time, doesn't bother me. It'll not phase the Cerinthe, it'll not phase the yellow wax bells. But for example, if the calomi had been in this tray and sitting in the tunnel, temperature through the day would have been fine, temperature at night time would have probably killed it, or the seed would have rotted. So it's always worth thinking before you sow. If you are sowing 2 different seeds in the same tray that are completely not the same as each other, do consider their requirements in hand, because you'll find there'll be lots of seeds with similar requirements, but it does take a bit more logistics into thinking about why you're sowing which with what. And that is really it for this video. I will keep you updated with any progress that happens. I'll be doing more sowing than this. This is just kind of the first big sow for the year. The clocks obviously do go forward this evening because today is Saturday, even though this video will be going out on the 1st of April. And that gives us 1 additional hour of daylight. And the reason I've held off until now to sow is because a lot of these seeds are actually light dependent. So although sometimes you'll read temperatures on seed packets and it must have this and it must have that, you will find 9 times out of 10 light is also a big factor into helping plants. It triggers them and it will trigger seeds. And where I've gone wrong in the past is I've tried to jump the gun and sow too much in February, and which is, don't get me wrong, you can do that, and this is why this video is about the April full, because if you have the right equipment, if you have the right LED lights, if you're prepared to invest in the right equipment, you could sow anything at any time of the year. You could have a full hydroponic system and it would be amazing. Fortunately, I don't have the budget or the skill set or the time to do any of that, so there's still nothing to stop me sowing earlier. I could still sow in February if I wish, but it just makes more sense, I suppose, when you see the success rate you'll have when you sow later. And I'll be sowing right up until the start of June. So June will be a great time to sow all your biennials. Right now, focus on what you want to eat, what veg you want to eat, etc. So yeah, this year I hope to really up the veg game as well. I hope to have melons in here, there'll be tomatoes in here, there'll be cucumbers. I hope to have really unusual vegetables as well. I hope to have purple carrots. So lots of exciting stuff coming very soon. Lots of exotic plants hopefully coming soon as well. Yeah, in 4 or 5 weeks time, all of these seedlings will hopefully be pushed through and I'll be pulling my hair out, trying to get them all potted on for the next batch of sowing. And as these ones are coming through, I have even more seed cells in the greenhouse which are coming through, and then that will give me more seed trays, and it's a whole system. But if anybody has any questions about growing or propagating, leave me a message. I will try and help you as best I can. And as always, thank you for supporting this channel, this page. It really means a lot.